around 8 p.m. So we're going to start with some brief opening questions just to gauge your familiarity with the Watershed Planning Project and some of the things we're going to be talking about today. I am going to present a high-level overview of the One Water framework, which is integral to watershed planning and drinking water alike. Then I'm going to turn it over to the Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission, and we have Carlos, Eric, and Kenny here from that agency who are going to present and be able to answer all of our questions about the city's drinking water. And then I'm going to turn it over to Katie, and we have a facilitated discussion activity with some breakout groups, and we're going to brainstorm some ways that we can help protect drinking water within the city's watersheds. And then in our last time, we'll wrap up with some closing items, some things that are coming up, and any questions. So with that, we'll do our brief introductory poll questions, which I will ask Katie to go ahead and launch for us. And you'll see two questions on the screen here. The first question is whether you have attended any of our previous watershed planning meetings or if this is your first time joining us. I think is this our fifth, sixth so far? I'm losing track. So there's been a couple so far. And then the second question here is, how are you most interested in contributing to the city's watershed planning project? So some of these things are things we've discussed previously, like our volunteer stream assessments, community events, providing us with insight on specific locations or general concerns about environmental quality, and then input on potential solutions for problem areas. So we'll give everyone another couple of moments to respond to those questions, and then we'll display the results in a minute. And if I'm not mistaken, Michaela and the city team can chime in and correct me, but I think those volunteer stream assessments are underway, so definitely keep an eye out for next steps on those soon. They're coming up. All right, we'll give everyone another 10 seconds, and then we'll go ahead and close up the poll and present the results. All right, Katie, whenever you're ready. All right, so we have lots of repeat attendees, but a new person as well. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. And we see lots of different interest in participating in the project, which is great. So we'll talk about ways that each of these actions, like ways you can participate and kind of next steps for those as we get into the end of today's meeting. All right, so we can stop sharing that and go back to our slides. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nancy to talk a little bit about something going on with the city. Go ahead, Nancy.
Yes, very quickly. And because we have this captive audience of people who are interested in our watershed, I'd love to invite you to join our Environmental Affairs Committee. It meets on the second Tuesday evening of every month. Generally, we meet via Zoom, so you don't even have to leave your home. We do have activities that we'd love you to attend and help with throughout the year, but these are opportunities for you to be involved in the community, especially if you're a resident of the area and the watersheds. We'd love you to be a part of this committee, and I invite you to check out our website and see what it takes to be a board member. It's very easy. And again, if you're interested in this kind of work, we'd love to have you more involved. So thank you. Thanks for the 2-second pitch.
Thanks so much, Nancy. Yeah, this is a great opportunity for folks who are feeling excited about the watershed planning process to kind of keep the momentum going. So definitely jump on the opportunity while there's space still on the committee. All right. And with that, I am just going to take a couple of moments to kind of frame our presentation today about drinking water and some of the questions that we had from our last stakeholder meeting within the context of watershed planning, and specifically as it relates to kind of the one water framework or school of thought, so to speak. So, what is One Water? One Water is a kind of philosophical, so to speak, framework, but more programmatic than anything, where we consider all different types of water in a more holistic, integrative, and inclusive way. And this is much more sustainable, and it also contributes to healthier economic successes and just more kind of cohabitating, holistic outcomes for water. So perceiving water as a more connected thing, stormwater as it contributes to drinking water and how wastewater is treated and discharged back. This is kind of the framework that we're talking about. So as you see here on the right, there are lots of different stakeholder groups who must participate in order for One Water to be successful. There are a lot of programmatic and regulatory kind of blocks, so to speak, or hurdles where it's hard for sectors and industries and different types of stakeholders to work together on water issues. So you see here that there's community members, industries, farmers, policymakers, and many others all have a place within the One Water framework to preserve and protect water within their communities. So I'm sharing a couple of updates from the U.S. Water Alliance, which kind of is the, we'll say, figurehead and driver, primary author of the One Water framework, and they organize lots of different national surveys and stakeholder committees and things of that sort. And they did a really cool survey back in 2023 of a bunch of different types of water professionals. You see here at the bottom, about 40% of them identified with a direct water system management role in terms of their career position. About 50% of them were a non-utility, but still a city or local government entity. And about 13% of them are entirely outside of the water sector, but obviously their actions and their industries still affect our drinking water. So back in this survey in 2023, the U.S. Water Alliance found that there are a lot of barriers to the momentum of kind of considering water management in a more holistic way. And that's something we're really trying to do with these watershed plans. That's why we're following EPA's 9-element framework that considers a bunch of different elements and holding stakeholder meetings like this one to engage representatives from a bunch of different sectors and all different types of stakeholders. So as you can see here, there's technical capacity limitations, there are regulatory and legislative constraints, and there's also a lack of standards or examples of things being implemented. So we hope that this project is a good example of how One Water can be considered as part of watershed planning in a way that's really meaningful to protecting drinking water for the city of Gaithersburg and all the other communities that are served by the Potomac filtration plant. A couple of key connections here for how One Water is related to watershed planning. So source water assessment and protection is a big part of what we're doing. When we have source waters downstream of our watersheds, like we do with the Potomac River, we need to monitor those water bodies and also protect them through land management actions and all different types of things. So MDE has a really cool webpage with some information about source water assessment and protection if you want to learn more. A couple more key connections. So watershed planning, I want to kind of just emphasize the connection to public health, and that is ultimately what we're doing. So obviously it's about environmental health and protecting natural resources as a primary driver, but there are large public health in relationships as well when we do watershed planning. And that's partially because water and land are linked. Government, industry, and communities all rely on these natural resources to be happy, healthy, and also economically stable and successful. So that's kind of why we're moving towards this connectedness. And then the last thing I just kind of want to emphasize, which is honestly a big part of why I do my job personally, is that water is permanent and it's finite. We are stuck with this water the earth has been stuck with this water, and it is a really, really essential resource for us all. So just understanding that we cannot get new water and this is what we have to protect in a cycle is, I think, a really key takeaway. So as you can see here, understanding this kind of full water cycle helps build more vibrant communities, healthier economies, and of course, healthier environments as well. So with that, that's just kind of some food for thought. There's a couple more resources here that I wanted to share, and when we send out these slides, you're welcome to explore these more. There's a roadmap for One Water implementation in communities. There's a rubric or some specific things that your public utility could be doing to implement these One Water framework principles. And then there's a really cool report about how arts and culture can connect with One Water partnerships to kind of enhance water quality and drinking water goals and all of that stuff. So just some recommended reading. And with that, I am very excited to turn it over to the Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission, who has developed this excellent presentation overviewing drinking water in the city of Gaithersburg. And I do want to also thank all of you for your questions at our last meeting, which we provided to WSSC to kind of help guide what they're going to share with us today. So we hope that you have a chance to get all of your questions answered today. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it right over to WSSC, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Jordan, and thank you everyone in the city of Gaithersburg. I'm not sure if oh, there it is. It's almost up. So I'll just give a second for that to pop up. All right, hopefully everyone can see that. Good evening. My name is Kenneth Simons, and I serve as one of the government affairs managers for WSSC Water. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you this evening. I'm joined by two of my colleagues who are going to bring some valuable expertise and experience to our discussion. First is Eric Lang, the section manager of plant engineering at our Potomac Water Filtration Plant, as well as Carlos Salazar, our community relations outreach specialist. Next slide, please. Together, we are going to walk you through the agenda you see here. Our presentation aims to provide a high-level overview of where water comes from, how it's treated and tested, and the proactive steps we're taking to protect public health and plan for a smart One Water future. We look forward to tonight's discussion and welcome your questions. Next slide, please. Before I dive into the overview, I also like to take a moment to recognize my colleague, Thomas Johnson. He is our other government affairs manager. I primarily handle state-related issues, while Thomas is your main point of contact for county and municipal matters such as your community. If you ever have any questions or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out to Thomas, but I'm always happy to help. I'd also like to remind everyone on the call to please mute yourselves, and we will take questions at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. Now I will do a quick overview of how WSSC Water delivers clean, safe water to nearly 2 million residents. WSSC Water has proudly served our community for more than 107 years with a stellar record of no drinking water quality violations. Every day, we deliver safe, clean water to 1.9 million residents in Prince George's and Montgomery counties. A quick highlight of what we do includes providing 162 million gallons of water each day, supporting more than 1,700 employees who work to keep your water flowing, cover 1,000 square miles of service area, maintain thousands of miles of pipes and critical infrastructure. We invest in long-term improvements to ensure reliable service, and we help support the local economy through jobs, service, and infrastructure investments. WSSC Water is proud to make sure every home, business, and community has access to clean, reliable water now and for generations to come. Next slide, please. I will now turn the presentation over to Eric, who will walk us through where water comes from and how we treat it to ensure it meets the highest standards of safety and quality. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kenneth, for that introduction. Good evening, everyone. My name is Eric. Like I mentioned before, I'm a section manager at the Potomac Water Filtration Plant. And so we're going to dive into our first slide that I'm going to go over. So many of you guys know, probably seen this in third grade classrooms. This is how the water cycle works. Since we're talking about watershed, generally most of the water you guys are familiar with are in oceans, lakes, ponds, so on and so forth. They undergo evaporation by the sun as it heats it up, forms clouds through that you can see on the screen there through evaporation. And as it condenses, it falls down and forms of snow, rain, sleet, and everything else that you're familiar with from the weather patterns, some of which we need right now from the rains. It's been a while. And so the water then either goes through on the surface as runoff or it can percolate through the ground through infiltration and percolation. And those two different types of movement of water either causes surface water, which is but what WSC uses as a source water, or it can go through groundwater, which percolates through the ground, and then you can extract it through wells. And it goes through this cycle, now for millions of years. It's been around since the time of dinosaurs, and it's still here with us now. So what Jordan mentioned previously about the water that's been around us, this is what we're talking about. It's continues the cycle, and we're just a part of this cycle as it cycles through. So next slide, please. Alrighty, so a little bit about what we do here at WSC and how the environment and the watershed interacts with our day-to-day operations. So like I mentioned before, we have two water filtration plants. They're located on the Potomac River and the Patuxent Reservoir. On the Potomac River side, if you guys ever drive by River Road, you'll see a large facility. That's where I'm based and where my current facility is located. We also have a sister plant located in Laurel. So if you guys ever drive past our headquarters on 95, going northbound, on the left-hand side, you'll see a reservoir dam in that section. We also have a lovely azalea garden over there that I know people drive all the from New England to come visit when it comes into bloom. But that is the source water for that local area in Laurel. So those are our source waters from where your water in Gaithersburg specifically generally is going to be coming from Potomac River. And so the map earlier that Ken has shown can show when you guys let it later, you'll see the area. But Gaithersburg is basically supplied by the Potomac River and the Potomac Water Filtration Plant. So the water enters our water filtration plants, and then we undergo engineering chemical processes that basically makes it potable and safe for the public for use. We have generally two different mandates. We have water quality, which you guys saw there. We have 107 years of no water, drinking water quality violations, as well as for fire suppression. So we also have to prevent a quantity of water sufficient for fire protection. After that water is treated through various chemical processes, for instance, we add lime to help with corrosion issues. We add orthophosphate to create a eggshell layer on the inner diameter of the piping that stops lead and copper from leaching the pipes. We also add chlorine to our system to disinfect to make sure that the water stays safe through the entire drinking filtration process and the storage and the pumping and all the different miles that we have before it goes to your tap. And finally, we add fluoride into our drinking water for dental health. And so that, once it's all done, treated, and everything else, they get distributed through that 5,800 miles of water distribution that you see right there and gets ended at our customers. And from there, when you guys open your tap, open your sink, fills up the toilet, what have you, that's the water that comes out of there. So we treat it all to that same standard. And we also basically treat the water that leaves the house. So once that potable water enters the house, all the wastewater that you guys generate that goes to municipal sewer, WSC also responds for that. So what we do is we have a vast, extensive gravity, basically generally gravity fed gravity line system where wastewater is collected and then sent to our treatment plants. Part of our wastewater also gets diverted to DC Water to their Blue Plains facility, but we also have 6 different wastewater treatment, or what we call wastewater resource recovery facilities that we operate to treat the water before discharging back in the environment. So that gravity collection system is 5,900 miles, very similar to our water distribution system. It can have different pumping stations depending on the localized area zone that you guys have. And then they get pumped through our water resource recovery facilities that's indicated there on the bottom left, which undergoes similar engineering and chemical treatment processes before we discharge it back to our what we call receiving water and undergoes the whole entire water cycle that we saw before. And that's how we both keep the customer safe and also keeps the water safe for the environment when it's for recreational use or for the different other ecological animals that exist in our discharge water. All right. Next slide, please. So as part of what we're talking about, a big part of what customers and also residents can use is our SaltWise campaign. I know we're in the middle of summer. It's not the best way to talk about salt because we're kind of not using it right now, but it's just something to keep in mind for you guys and how you guys can help the watershed is that if you guys are able to shovel right away any salt after the snowstorm has passed, use less salt, sweep or reuse the salt, that both basically limits the amount of salt that enters our source water, and that means that as a facility of ourselves, we have less difficulties treating the water because as the amount of salt that collects through all the residents and all the application, all the roads enters the watershed, it changes the water chemistry that enters the plant and means that we may have to use more chemicals. We have to use more intensive engineering processes to kind of work with that salt because it's hard to kind of strip away or remove. So it increases our energy costs, increases our chemical costs. So the less that you can use, the less loading that you can put into the source water, the easier both for your water bills and for us to treat here at the plant for you guys. And so there's a great resource that you can see on the bottom there at montgomerycountymd.gov/salt that you can read more about, especially during the wintertime. Alrighty. And then in this section here, I want to talk a little bit about our long-term plans and what WCC is doing in terms of capital infrastructure improvements, as well as regulations and kind of more consumer-based impacts that we can see regarding WSSC. So next slide, please. So the first thing I want to talk about is our capital improvements program. So we have a 6-year plan that helps guide where we invest our resources, where your water bill basically goes to fund. And a big part of that, one of the projects I want to highlight in our CIP program is the Clopper Road project that is just not that far from the bounds of Gaithersburg. We're putting in 3 24-inch mains for clean water. That goes to Clopper Road. There's a website on it if you guys want to wsccwater.com/Clopper Road. You guys can see kind of that highlight of that project. And so a big part of what we're doing for our CIP, a big part of that's happening here directly at Potomac is our what we call our consent decree program. It is over $100 million. And what we're trying to do is basically limit the amount of discharge or pollutants that enters the river after our discharge event. So currently, what happens with the Potomac water is that a large portion of our discharge gets sent right back to the river during high solids events. And so this project that we're currently undergoing basically creates a treatment process for that discharge and is able to remove a lot of the turbidity, aluminum, and other chemicals that basically are inside our wastewater and discharge, and going to treat it, and we're going to haul offsite as solids, and then clearer water and cleaner water is going to be discharged downstream of us in the Potomac River. All right, next slide, please. So a little bit about regulations and lead and copper, as well as PFAS. There are kind of 2 sections I want to talk about here. The first one is on your left, lead and copper rule. And so what WSSC has done is that we've removed all of our known lead pipe within our distribution system. And so we know that the water we deliver is lead free. However, there are some household connections that, because it's not inside our network, we don't have visibility into. So you guys can do us a really big favor is that if you guys go to wsccwater.com/pipe type that you see on the bottom left there, you can do a little bit of consumer science, and you can, if you go to there, you can see your property line. You click on your address, and they'll tell you whether or not we know whether or not your line is lead free, or if it's unknown or galvanized or different types. But if your address is showing up as not lead, it'll take you to next steps, which involves a form you can fill out, as well as you do a little bit of scratch testing and stuff like that you can submit, and then WSC will work with you on whether or not to help you remove a possible lead source or what your household connections are. And so on the right-hand side, next one talked about is PFAS. So most of you guys probably have heard about this in the news. These are also known as the forever chemicals. WSSC has been undergoing our source water testing for quite a few years now, since 2021. And you can see a lot of our results on our source water at wsccwater.com/PFAS. And basically what we've done over the past years is we know that this was coming down the lines, and we've been currently undergoing a long-term facility plan. We are in the final stages of our finalizing our design selections for this next generation of contaminants that we're removing. But the good news is that right now, the PFAS that we've detected in our source water is all well below basically federal limits that we've seen. And so we're kind of being proactive with our steps to make sure that we have the next generation of chemicals be ready to be treated as well here in the WSSC and as our customers. And then just, in overview of all this, we also have, to do all this stuff, we have a lab in Silver Spring that conducts basically 500,000 water quality tests every year. And in your mailer, hopefully soon, I believe it's coming out this month, is we have a water quality report that's required for us to be published annually. So if you guys get that postcard, I believe there's going to be a QR code on there that you can scan to access the WSC water quality report for 2024. And with that, I think I'm going to hand that over to Carlos, who's going to finish out the presentation and keep us going.
Thank you so much, Eric. I'm going to talk about some resources for our customers, different things, way to stay connected, and be informed about projects in your neighborhood, some important contacts as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. First thing we wanted to talk about is In Your Neighborhood. In Your Neighborhood is a great tool to discover what projects are happening in your area, whether they're in planning, which we call the design phase, or whether they're in construction. And you can also scan this QR code, and there are many QR codes from this point of the presentation on that will take you directly to more information. So as Eric mentioned before, that Clapper Road project, that has been a large undertaking and one of our major projects that we've started and are set to finish, I think, in 27. You can scan this and actually see the presentations that have taken place in the community and look at that information. So it's a great resource in your neighborhood. You can also see emergency events as well. So anytime WSSC Water is working in your neighborhood, you can use the In Your Neighborhood website to find out what's happening. I've also included Joy Hamilton, our project outreach manager's information here as well. And we'll make sure that these slides are available to you. But if you want to screenshot it as well, you can. But again, we'll make sure that this is available to you. Also, WSSC Water has 4 pillars of how we provide bill assistance to our customers. Our first being Promise Pay, our second Customer Assistance Program, or what we like to refer to as CAP, on which I'll expand a little bit about an exciting new partnership that we have with Habitat for Humanity. We also have our Water Fund, which is actually created by employees at WSSC Water in the early 90s. And then Pipe ER, which actually we just passed legislation this past year, which upped the loan amount from 5,000 to 10,000 to meet the needs of our customers. And you can scan any of these QR codes, or if you want just more general information about our financial assistance programs, you can scan the QR code down here at the bottom. We're also really excited about our Get Current program, which we've just extended. This program started March 1st, and now it will run through October 31st. It was set to end on July 1st. So any customer with a delinquent balance as of June 1st, 2025, can receive bill credits up to 50%, and 100% of those late payment charges, internal and fees will be waived. So again, you can visit wsscwater.com/getcurrent and apply today. And then more on that Habitat for Humanity partnership. Cap enrolled homeowners can receive up to $9,000 per year in plumbing repair services. CAP, again, is our customer assistance program, and that provides financial assistance to approved residential customers. And you can scan the QR code for more info. As of July 1st, we do have a new rate structure. So your bills might look a little bit different than they did previous to July 1. So a typical customer with a family of 3 using 48 gallons of water per person daily would see a quarterly increase of $25.60 on their bill, which includes an increase in fees and other charges. So this is a great example of water use using the new rate starting July 1. And you can see some things that we might do that we don't think consumes as much water as we would think, actually consume quite a bit of water. The one that was most eye-opening for me is the playing in the sprinkler for 30 minutes. I mean, I did this as a kid quite a bit. So I'm sure there are a lot of families that are, taking advantage of this hot weather and jumping through the sprinkler. But just 30 minutes, 2 times per week, that's 1,300 gallons of water used. And that's 15,000, over 15,000 gallons of water per quarter, and $373 on top of your normal quarterly bill. So again, as we think about water conservation and things like that, we want to think about just being, a little bit more frugal when we're playing in the sprinkler, because it can add a lot on top of your monthly bill. I also wanted to share some good contact information. We have customer service advisors available from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and we have translation services available in 9 different languages. That's the number up at the top. You can also email customer service at wsscwater.com. If you'd like to stay informed about water-related incidents near your home, office, or any other important addresses like daycare or any other address or maybe a loved one, you can register at wsscwater.com/CNS. That's our customer notification system. And one of the best ways that we learn about breaks or leaks in our service system is through the emergency support center. Emergency call center rather, and you can report a water or sewer emergency by calling the number at 301-206-4002, emailing emergency call center at wsscwater.com, or using your WSSC Water mobile app, which is available on the Google Play Store and Apple App Store. Then one of the awesome things about WSSC Water is we have a customer advocate program. The customer advocate that serves the Gaithersburg area and pretty much northern Montgomery County is Philip Callahan. His information is here. This is basically for any issue that customer serve, while we're confident that our customer service advisors can help you, if there is something that falls outside of what a typical call might be, our customer advocates are there to support you for on escalated issues. They deliver important construction notifications. If there's a water shutdown for whatever reason, they usually provide those notices. They also provide water in case of an emergency. When you're not able to have access to your water, they provide clean drinking water for you. And they're at a lot of community events as well. So great resource to have if you can't get an issue solved with customer service. Please reach out to one of our advocates if depending on which area you live in. And this is our final slide here in our presentation. This is our contact information. As Kenny mentioned today, he's filling in today for our good friend, Thomas Johnson, who is the Government Affairs Manager for municipal matters. So his information is here, Eric's information is here, and my information. If you think of any questions that you didn't get a chance to ask tonight, please reach out. Feel free to reach out to one of us or all of us and let us know, how we can help, and we'll do our best to assist. And without further ado, we'll open the floor for questions. And I do just want to go through one comment we have from Robin, which is I actually just water my garden in years when there isn't nearly as much rain as this year. Yeah, so we definitely had drought-like conditions earlier in 2025. I mean 2024. I always get mixed up because or heading into 2025. But the rain recently, all this rain that we've received has actually moved us out of those drought-like conditions. So that's really, really good news. Yeah, but please feel free to type your question in the chat or just unmute and.
Yeah, this is Bruce Daggy here. I have a question. First of all, gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. That's really a great presentation. Earlier today, I was reading the Isaac Walton League Salt Watch annual report, and it mentioned in there that you've noticed chloride levels going up in the rivers for the last few years. And I wondered why that is. I mean, salting the roads isn't a new thing. What's driving the chloride levels ever higher, and what can we do about it?
Thank you so much for that question, Bruce. I think Eric is able to provide an answer.
Sure, Bruce. That's one lead. Actually, I've interacted with them a few times. Though if you want to look at a more detailed report, there's actually a place I can refer you to. It's called the ICPRB, the Intercommission for the Potomac River Basin, and that's basically all of us stakeholders on the Potomac River are part of that group. And they have a report that they published regarding the salinity levels. They've been monitoring for about, I think, 30 years, 30 to 50 years. And so they have a full history on that. And we've been seeing that creeping, rising up chloride levels for that. Part of it is development. Part of it, there's various different sources of that. But if you go on the ICPRB website, they have a full breakdown report of the last 30 years that you can look into as well with more information.
We have a question in the chat. Are there special concerns for filtering water like prescription medicine or microbeads? Eric, I think this one is for you as well.
Sure. Given that our source water comes from the Potomac River, basically anything that falls into the Potomac water watershed, basically is going to impact our water quality. So everything from the Appalachian Mountains out towards the Blue Ridge Mountains, all the way down to where we had flooding earlier in basically Cumberland, where you guys saw the floods come through from Maryland. All of that water makes it down to us here in the Potomac Water Filtration Plant. So we see everything from certain, solids to leaves to all the different things you basically mentioned. A big part of that, we have a few processes that helps us out with that. On the smaller side that you guys are talking about, we have what we call dual media filters that has a two-layer, a sand layer, and an anthracite layer. And that basically removes most of the particles. And what we looked at is there's a parameter that we monitor called turbidity. And it is basically one of the most important parameters we look for here at the river. And if it's high turbidity, if the number is a large number, that means that the water is less clear. And then the smaller number, the more clear the water is. So on high storm events we've had, for example, last weekend when we had a large storm, our turbidity got up to 600 inside our source water. But what comes out of our filter is down to 0.2, 0.02 to those levels. So we're achieving over 99.99% reductions in our turbidities during that case. And that's for the physical objects and small physical objects that you see. In terms of chemical, we treat that through our basic chlorination. And so chlorine is a really, really good oxidizer. It basically reacts with anything organic that's in the water and basically disinfects it and breaks it apart. And so that's what allows your water to maintain its potability throughout the distribution system, and it also allows to react with a lot of the different organic compounds, such as pharmaceuticals, and treat for those things.
Thank you, Eric.
Eric, I actually have another question. I know that some areas of the US or maybe the world during times when COVID was more prevalent, or that wastewater was sometimes tested to get a feel for where COVID activity and infections were high. I wondered how that worked for WSSC. Thank you.
Sure, Robin. On that front, we're actually still taking COVID samples. I actually just talked to one of the superintendents from a different plant there. We're still submitting those samples under the NSF program. And so WC was a big part of that effort to kind of monitor outbreaks as it was happening. And so it has turned out to be a really good indicator for us as an early public health warning. Hey, there may be an uptick in prevalence of the disease. And so it's actually been expanded in some fields. My old advisor actually currently in University of Michigan is actually doing some studies on that to try to catch also respiratory and gastrointestinal viruses that they can try to catch that. So it is actually currently still underway here at WSSC to monitor our wastewater for pathogenic activity and possible outbreaks in the community.
That's excellent. Thank you.
We have another question in the chat. What are the most expensive pollution types to treat? Any besides salt that are easy for residents to reduce? Eric, that's another one for you.
Sure. It kind of depends on the seasonality. We deal with a variety of different factors, like I mentioned before, on different types of contaminant that's coming in. Generally, most of the other stuff we can generally capture within our filters. Salt is a little more difficult because it is such a small ions that are dissolved in water. That's what makes them so much harder to treat, and that's why generally, if you guys heard of desalination, it's very energy intensive because you basically need to strip those individual chloride and sodium ions, which are very, very tiny, in order to make the water unsaltified, if you can, for it. But generally, basically what we do is for those contaminants, we generally can take care of it. Just our biggest challenge is chloride and sodium ions due to their small size. The rest of it, the filters can basically handle.
Could you say, are you looking at ion exchange for PFAS or what technology you're considering?
Sure, there's quite a few technologies out there. It's a cost benefit analysis, right? If we want to, we can make ultra pure water by converting Potomac to a reverse osmosis plant. But the latest estimates on that's probably cost to a $2 billion upgrade, and I'm sure none of you guys are happy to see your water bill go up more than you guys necessarily have to. So that's why we're doing our engineering studies, and we're gonna do some pilot testing as well to find out what is the most bang for our buck in terms of treatment wise for PFAS, especially with the low concentration we see at the Potomac River. We don't want to go overkill and just put in all this new fancy technology and have you guys go your water bill up just because it's a nice new fancy technology. So that's why we're in current final stages of assessing those technologies. There are a couple of options to choose from, and so we're undergoing engineering and budgetary considerations for that before we implement and pilot.
I have a question. Do you all accept any effluent from landfills in the service area? And have you done or do you know of any like local limit studies that have been conducted within the jurisdictions in your service area to identify the main sources of contaminants that are reaching the Potomac River?
So generally, in terms of contaminants, what we're looking for, we haven't done exactly landfill because most landfills now, I don't know how much you guys have done on leachate linings and individual treatment options that they have there, as well as methane recapture and things like that. But we haven't really done a direct study for where landfills located. There, because generally landfills are located with, especially nowadays, they're designed with, linings on there that does not percolate groundwater, and all the water is collected for treatment prior to the discharge. And this is where kind of Potomac River both hurts us and helps us. The inertial river of the river has such a large quantity of it that a lot of pollutants gets basically diluted. One of the big challenges that we see is hydrocarbons, is because when you have something like, many of you guys, if you change your oil or go to a gas station, you put a drop of gasoline on the water, what happens to the water? It just spreads, right? All throughout the entire top of the water in a huge, pretty rainbow color. But that's contaminant that is, floating through there and it's dispersed as well. So those type of things we keep an eye out for. That's one of our more on our radar in terms of our concerns that could possibly happen. But aside from that, we haven't done really source tracing. We've started doing that a little bit with PFAS, but most of the rest of them, we kind of just handle it as it comes along. There's a lot of parameters that we look at from the lab side. We do a lot of internal testing for a lot of different EPA requirements and kind of nice to know chemicals that we have, and we keep track of those and check our levels and make sure everything else is within line for those.
That makes sense. Yeah. And I was asking mostly about like the truckloads of what was collected from the liners of landfills, because I know those can be pretty PFAS heavy, but it's source assessment is expensive. And when your levels are not exceeding health advisory threats or anything, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah, and when we talk about, just to get a people sense of scaling, we're talking about like 1 teaspoon in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. That's the amount of kind of PFAS detections that we're looking at. So it is really, really, really small. And so right now, the lab is actually undergoing a phase 2 expansion right now so that we can have a lab that can detect PFAS chemicals. And so, and a big part of it is that most labs can't do it because if you use Teflon, and a lot of samples were brought out using Teflon containers and so on and so forth, that's a source of PFAS. So if you had your sample source in PFAS, you can't do it. So we basically build a brand new lab from scratch that has never seen PFAS and that type of chemical before. So it can do these trace analysis and make sure that the water remains safe and we know what's going on.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. And like even the people collecting the samples can be wearing PFAS gloves or plastic gloves that release PFAS or clothing that releases PFAS and the waterproofing. It's very stringent to collect these samples.
Yeah, and we do the same thing with what we call VOCs, volatile organic compounds. So when we sample for those as well, they'll tell you if your like husband
Can't
or
wear
wife
perfume.
wore the wrong, shade of cologne and you hugged them in the morning, that can give off a false VOC reading. And it's just a lot of that sensitive. So there's a lot that goes into our sampling crews. I give them great credit for that. They're really responsive. They give us the turnaround times that we need and everything else. So I'm really proud of what they do.
Thanks so much, you guys. It's so cool to hear about the science and engineering that goes into these things that so many of us take for granted, like being able to flush your toilet and have it go away and turn on your tap and be able to drink it without a concern. So really great presentation. And again, we will be sharing these slides out with all attendees as well as the